And just as we get started, I'm just going to ask everybody to make sure you're on mute, so that, yeah, we're just avoiding any background noise. Anyways, thank you so very much for participating in our session today on the workforce requirements for Alberta's emerging clean tech sector. This is for those of you that that follow us, a fair amount on and attend a lot of our webinars. You'll know that despite Cheryl and I doing some work in, around the evolving needs of the energy ecosystem, this is actually the first workshop we're doing where we're doing a deep dive on Alberta's emerging clean tech sector. And it's kind of exciting for us because we do feel like as, the economy recovers, and even what we're seeing in terms of the energy sector recovered, there is some momentum in this area. And so we're very happy to share the information that we've been able to pull together on the opportunities for those of you with oil and gas expertise in this area. This webinar is made possible thanks to funding from the provincial government. And yes, we are recording, and so we will circulate the presentation and the recording of the presentation following our completion today. Just the agenda and the objectives that are highlighted here are, as advertised on Eventbrite. So we're assuming this is why you're here. But I do want to say that kind of Alberta's clean tech sector is evolving, and it's quite broad. And so the information that we're going to share today is current and as up to date as we are on what's happening in this space. But I think the value add that we will share throughout the webinar and in some follow-up information that we'll send to you is really about some of the methodologies and tools that we use to monitor what's going on in this sector, as well as what you can do to kind of develop your own personal career transition plan if this is a sector that you're interested in. So lots of content, but again, we feel that some of those tools and methodologies are those that are going to provide the most value to you on an ongoing basis. And I want to say that's true for the information that Avery shares, lots of tips and strategies as on how to enhance your mental resiliency that in the end also translates into a more productive job search. And so it really is about giving you the tools to leverage what we're talking about today on an ongoing basis. We will, if we have time, take your questions at the end of the session. And so, yeah, we'll chat a little bit more about that, but really just use that chat function in order to submit your questions or any kind of reactions to the content that we're about to share. Again, those of you that have attended our sessions in the past or follow our work know that the details behind the work that we do on assessing, the opportunities for those of you with oil and gas expertise in the evolving economy is housed at this website, careertransitions.ca. But we're here to tell you that that's going to be short-lived because the owner of this website, PetroLMI, is actually transitioning this information into a new website with lots of really cool functionality and that kind of stuff. So, we'll keep you posted on, when that new site is available. We expect it'll be, within the month. But it's really important to us that you get the detailed information that supports what we're sharing today in kind of a format that's familiar to you. So in addition to the webinar and the PDF of this PowerPoint, we're also going to share with you the slides that are the details behind our work and assessment of oil and gas transferability into clean tech and oil and gas. So you'll get two packages, and one's going to be a lot more detailed than what we're sharing today, that again will help you in your overall market research around career opportunities in this sector. This seems like old hat in terms of webinar protocols. We've all been on webinars so much in the last 2 years, but just, to quickly go through this, I have already sort of addressed that first bullet point. We do use polls, a few polls throughout the session. They kind of, they're of value to us in two ways. One, just the information you share, if we can incorporate that information into our presentation as we're doing it now, we certainly like to do that. But also the information we gather really is helpful to us in planning for future webinars and workshops. And so we really appreciate the information and the responses that you share through the polls. Yeah, just, in terms of sort of courtesy, remain on mute. We will wrap up with that Q&A session. And again, just use the chat function to share any of your questions or even reactions to any information that we are sharing. And if you'd be more comfortable sharing a question or a comment anonymously, don't hesitate to direct message any one of us hosts. You can do that just in the bottom right-hand corner of the chat function. Okay, and on that note is our first poll. So I'm going to ask Andrea to start our poll. And this is just a few introductory questions that, as I said, helps us to kind of learn a little bit more about who's in the room so we can leverage that during this presentation, but also a couple of other questions that will help us, kind of plan for some of our future webinars. There's 3 questions. You can just go through them on your own timing. You don't have to wait for us to change the question out. They're all there. So just scroll through. If none of the responses kind of fit for you, please feel free to use chat to respond more appropriately for yourself, or even just to, kind of further explain your response. I think we're getting close, maybe just another 30 seconds to wrap up your answers. And let's close it off. Great. And so Let's just take a quick look at the results. All right, so fairly wide variety of people, you know, different backgrounds coming from what would be their usual occupation, and that's great, because as we're going to share with you, you know, the clean tech sector actually draws from a broad range of occupations and backgrounds, and so it's good to see such a wide variety of people here. Looks like a couple of people maybe answered in others, so a category that wasn't included in the responses. And some of the current barriers. So ageism, we certainly know that, you know, the labor pool, the talent pool that's available is a mature workforce. And so we understand that. And we also know that that can kind of play into this employer bias, generally against, you know, mature workers, but also against oil and gas workers. And so overqualified for the job, again, that might be related to some people's impressions of the talent pool that's available, unsure of what trainings that you're taking. And so this is really important to us, and we appreciate this. Pleased to say that our next webinar that will be advertised in the next newsletter does focus on addressing some of those employer biases. And so us having this information is sure helpful in terms of as we plan more details around that workshop. And yes, we're always just curious as to how many people might be working with a career and employment consultant. We do a lot of work with career and employment consultants, and so we know that you know, they are curious about this information as well. And so it is an opportunity. Many of them have had access to our information. And so it is an opportunity to work with somebody who has some similar tools and resources in their back pocket for you to kind of work through some of this information. And so we encourage you to, you know, perhaps seek out that kind of support if you find that you're struggling a little bit. And in one of our previous newsletters, we did talk about where some of those free services are and available through the Alberta government. So now to kind of get into the meat of some of our webinar, and a little bit about the outlook for Alberta's emerging clean tech sector. And so you know, there's a lot of sort of definitions out there in terms of what is the clean tech sector. Sometimes it's called clean energy. And so we just wanted to provide some context as we go through this work, that ours focuses on, our definition focuses on the application of environmentally sustainable technologies to extract and process non-renewable energy in support of a low carbon environment. And so basically, our focus is really on clean tech as it applies to oil and gas. And part of the reason why we focus specifically on clean tech, oil and gas, is because our work is focused on trying to understand what are those career transition opportunities within Alberta's economy for those that have oil and gas expertise. And we really find that this is where the best fit is, because of that excellent domain knowledge you're coming to your job search with. So why clean tech, and why we feel like there's some momentum related to clean tech in oil and gas. And it really is kind of based on two assumptions that we come into this work with. You know, the first being that we believe we know that energy transition and the push to decarbonize is a real thing. It is occurring. But the second assumption we operate off of, and we know it's different than others that might be working in the clean tech or clean energy space, is that we also believe that the oil and gas industry isn't going away anytime soon. But if our overall goal is to lower emissions, doing oil and gas differently provides a significant opportunity to decarbonize and lower those emissions. And it's through clean tech that that's going to happen. The reason why we feel that oil and gas isn't going away soon is because there simply is no other energy source that currently provides energy at the scale that oil and gas does. And so until there is a reliable, reasonable, affordable alternative to oil and gas, it's going to be here. But we are seeing that industry is starting to, what we say, own its emissions and recognize the need to do things differently. There's a number of companies that have made the commitment to a net zero by 2050. So now we know what they're going to do, be net zero by 2050. Trying to understand how they're going to do it is really kind of at the crux of the work that we do, because how they do it is going to be what's going to drive employment opportunities. So a few things around that. There's no silver bullet. There's going to be a number of technologies that are going to be applied across the industry in order to reach that commitment of net zero by 2050. And that technology implementation is likely to vary by sector, by company, by asset, by geography. There's just a lot of factors, technological, economic, and even social, that's going to play a role in how clean tech and where clean tech is applied. What we also know is that in order to do it at the rate and speed that the industry wants to reach that net zero by 2050, it's going to require a lot of innovation, and it's going to require a lot of collaboration across oil and gas industries. And in fact, the oil and gas industry is the largest investor in clean tech, and is also key and critical to the piloting of clean tech and commercializing of clean tech. Finally, like other sort of innovation within the oil and gas industry, and kind of the Canadian reputation for being innovative, maybe more internationally, that's the reputation than it is here at home. There is a view that Canada has the opportunity to be a leader as it develops clean technology, and there is that opportunity to export it to other oil and gas producing countries. So just a little bit about that collaboration, as I had sort of mentioned earlier, there's no one company, government, or even industry that's going to do this as quickly as is needed. And so there really is a clean tech ecosystem coming together to innovate and deploy clean technologies in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. And so these sort of 5 different groupings of stakeholders are all playing a role in the clean tech ecosystem. And these are also the employers that we are considering as being part of the clean tech with oil and gas, because these are all playing a role in terms of innovating and deploying clean tech within the industry. As many of you will know, again, if you followed our work at all, our approach is to look at where there is activity, because activity drives employment. And so when we look at clean tech and understanding what are the drivers behind activity, we're seeing kind of 4 key sort of drivers. One is to meet some regulatory requirements that are coming and are here. And so there is the need for industry to do things differently. Also to stay competitive. And in the long term, actually reducing environmental footprint is also has a positive impact on operating costs. So there is a competitive, there is opportunity to be competitive on a cost perspective, but also on a carbon perspective by applying clean tech. I already mentioned that there's those net zero by 2050 commitments and to address climate change. And so that certainly is a driver for clean tech in oil and gas. And then we also know that there is a need to strengthen investor and public confidence in how the oil and gas industry does business, operates, and that it is working towards decarbonizing. And that's that whole ESG focus that we're hearing not only from industry, but it's really being driven by that investor community. What's kind of interesting in terms of clean tech and that ecosystem approach is that, different from some of the other sectors that we look at, government plays a role here in terms of actually driving some of the activity as well, because governments have also made those commitments to the global community to address climate change. And so we're seeing investment in clean tech and in oil and gas coming from industry. And that's individual companies for sure, but more and more companies coming together in collaboration to work on clean tech. Governments at both the federal and provincial levels, we're hearing announcements of strategies related to clean tech and some specific clean technologies that we'll talk a little bit more about. And they're also incenting activity in this area through incentive programs. And then finally, there's this whole group of what we call clean tech accelerators. And those are really organizations that are trying to bring together innovators and implementers and provide funding to accelerate clean tech across the industry. And those are supported by government funding, industry funding, angel investors, venture capitalists, philanthropists, just drawing on funds to invest from a broad range of sources. So in looking at clean tech specifically in oil and gas, and what we feel is the opportunity for employment, is that we've identified 6 clean tech sectors that we believe are nearer term clean technologies for the oil and gas industry. But we also know that there's going to be employment, just within that innovation ecosystem that really is going to be a driver behind taking a really great idea and turn it into a commercial solution. So we look at, employment associated with the clean tech innovation ecosystem, but also methane emissions reduction, CCUS. well decommissioning and remediation, but we're also looking at sort of what's upcoming in terms of this technology is how do you leverage that some of that infrastructure that's available on those decommissioned sites or even the wells themselves and repurpose them. And so that's sort of a bit of a different twist on traditional well decommissioning, which of course has been around for decades. We look at cleaner fuels that reduce carbon intensity, and then also 2 value-added products that are going to contribute to the lower carbon economy. And those are hydrogen and lithium. So these are the ones that we have detailed information on and what we'll share with you. Other sectors that are going to play a role in decarbonizing Canada's energy industry, and we encourage you to look at this, is both digitization of the oil and gas industry. That's a pathway to decarbonization, and of course the renewable energy sector. We also encourage you to look at employment from a broad value chain perspective. There's obviously going to be direct employment within those clean tech innovators and suppliers, those that are part of the ecosystem, and oil and gas companies themselves, but also indirect employment, because if there's a need for infrastructure or equipment, that's going to drive employment in the construction and manufacturing sectors. And then some of these clean technologies, they rely on an expanded supply chain. And so we know that it's either going to drive or at least sustain employment across another number of other sectors. So just again, this goes into a little bit more detail in terms of how we looked at some of those near-term indicators of moving towards being deployed or closer to being deployed and driving jobs. And so not going to go into this in detail, but rather just share with you that you can use these near-term indicators with other kinds of clean technologies that you might be aware of, or those that start getting a little more media attention or you start to hear about. If you sort of use these kind of indicators to assess, okay, is this clean tech? Is it currently being deployed? Is there a regulation that's driving it? Are we hearing announced strategies from either industry collaborations or any of the governments? Because that's an indicator that it's a direction a government or an industry is going. Or are there actually announced investments? I mean, those are clear indicators that that clean technology may be closer to being implemented than some of the others. And finally, just want to share with you a little bit on how we've assessed the opportunity to leverage oil and gas expertise across those clean tech sectors that we've done a deeper dive on. And so this really is looking at what's the oil and gas expertise that's also applicable to the clean tech sectors. And again, not going to go into this in detail. You're going to be provided with these slides, but it really is sort of a catalyst for you to start looking at, what is the expertise you bring to the table? How might those be assets to clean tech? Are there some specific clean technologies that really require that skill set? And can you position it as a value or a strength to a particular clean tech employer? And so this really is sort of doing that deeper dive assessment in terms of what you bring to the table as expertise and assets. And in some cases, this is going to mean shedding your typical job title. And I know that's difficult, but in some cases, the job title that you've used in the oil and gas industry is not the job title that's going to be used within the clean tech sector, even if there's a lot of these underlying oil and gas skills that are required. So I'm just going to wrap up this session with a demonstration of the kind of information you're going to get in your package that will give you further details about clean tech and oil and gas, and a bit deeper dive on those clean technologies that we've focused on. So this is a slide that you're going to see in your package. And our slides aren't always pretty, but they sure are jam-packed full of information. So for each sector, what we've tried to do is to provide some insights into that technology and the potential applications within the oil and gas industry. If possible, we've given some sense of, the demand and what are some of the key drivers for you to monitor around for activity levels, for activity levels. And we also, as much as possible through these hyperlinks, share with you sources that you can go to for more information and to follow trends. As I said earlier, clean tech is changing and evolving quickly. And so really to be successful and develop that deep understanding around this sector, it's going to take some research and some continuous monitoring of what's going on within these within the different technologies. And on that note, I am turning it over to Cheryl.
Thanks very much, Pat. So now what I'd like to do is get into the methodology section of our presentation. And the reason we feel this is so important is that it's a rapidly changing landscape. And we're providing you with the methodologies or the tools to continue to monitor the changes in the environment and the development of clean tech, and to apply it to your career transition. So the information I'm presenting is in careertransitions.ca, and as well will be included in the package of slides that we sent you. So I'm starting first by giving you an overview of how we approach sector to sector transferability, focusing on transferability from oil and gas to clean tech. And so again, I would urge you to understand the structure and the approach, and less so get yourself bogged down in the details, because there's quite a bit of content that we're jamming into this session. So what this shows you are our criteria for sector to sector transferability. And there are essentially 3 criteria. And for each of those 7 clean tech areas, we've assessed the transferability from oil and gas as high, medium, or low on each of these criteria. So the first is technical transferability, and that's exactly what you would think. How well does do the qualifications, the certifications, and the knowledge that you have, that you've gleaned from oil and gas, transfer to clean tech? Is it high, medium, or low? Secondly, what is the nature of work transferability? To what extent is the work environment, the culture, the relationships, the nature of the work environment similar or dissimilar to oil and gas? And lastly, what is the value proposition match? How likely is that a worker from oil and gas is going to accept an employment offer based on what we feel are the value proposition elements? And these include total compensation, the nature of work, the location of work, career development opportunities, and even the values of the sectors. So again, these are criteria that we have applied to transferability from oil and gas to clean tech, and we're arming you with that knowledge to do that yourself. So here's our findings for the transferability to clean tech. So essentially, when you look at the technical transferability, it is medium to high. It is high because clean tech requires a similar skill set to what we would find in oil and gas, engineering, technology, science, and so on, and understanding of geology and applying math, and even familiarity with a regulated sort of environment and how that impacts industry. And also, what is very transferable is the importance of understanding how the sector works from an operations and process perspective, as again, our scope for clean tech with oil and gas is focused on technology development of oil and gas to lower emissions. So what might be less transferable is that clean tech is made up of startups, innovation, technology developers that need to scale up their innovation and technology development. And that's a less common skill with oil and gas. So the requirement to develop, pilot, and commercialize and deploy technologies at scale is really critical. Business development skills are very important to clean tech. Raising capital is a key challenge, and overall business acumen. So these are technical skills that you may not have, but can develop to improve that technical transferability, as is digitization, which I'm sure that you're all aware of by now. So let's move from technical transferability to nature of work transferability. And here, this is medium to low as well, and medium because clean tech in oil and gas is in oil and gas. So that's improving the transferability based on the nature of work. But it also involves smaller organizations such as startups that have a more entrepreneurial culture and a less formal workplace. So that provides a lower transferability assessment for nature of work. So understanding the culture of any clean tech company that you're considering in your transferability, in your transition, is really critical and helpful in differentiating yourself. And then lastly, the value proposition transferability is high because clean tech in oil and gas pays similar to oil and gas because it is in that industry. And we expect that it will align with many of your values towards improving environment, social, and governance performance. So the question that I want to leave you with is to think about how you can prepare yourself for the different nature of work in clean tech. And here are some tips to do that. So based on our research, and this is speaking to employers, they have said to us that there are universal attributes that are becoming extremely important to work in clean tech and oil and gas. And these universal attributes demonstrate a shift in how the traditional oil and gas industry is working and who the oil and gas is working with in their development of clean tech. And this is putting greater emphasis on soft skills and on collaboration to produce and innovate clean technologies. This is also increasing the diversity in the field. And this is diversity in the way that we usually think of it in terms of visible minorities, but it is also diversity in terms of generational differences from new entrants that come with a different worldview and skill set sometimes, as well as more seasoned folks. So there's a need for generational diversity, as well as diversity and values, and as well as in occupations. So some of the universal attributes that employers have told us about are demonstrating a real change in mindset, in the culture in oil and gas and clean tech. And I'm not going to go through these in detail, but I'll just highlight a couple that relate to that innovation cycle, the discover, development, and deploy that's utilized in innovation. So that relies very much on agility and the ability to adapt to changes and to iterate with feedback, non-linear or systems thinking, being able to look at the big picture strategically, being very strong on relationship building to understand those expanded supply chains, but also dealing with small and micro employers that aren't as sophisticated in their ability to deal with the large oil and gas producers. Trust and collaboration, because clean tech involves working collectively together on problems. So that's cooperating without necessarily full disclosure on IP. And lastly, I think perseverance and continuous improvement. So this is a call to action for you, really, to think about how you can think about these attributes, how you can demonstrate these attributes and learn more about them to convince clean tech employers that you're a fit with the nature of work in clean tech. So I'm going to shift from sector to sector transferability to occupational transferability. And again, the information I'm going to provide you gives you the construct, or it gives you the overview of the approach that we're taking. And I'd like you to focus on that and focus less so on the detail, which we'll provide to you. So what we have done is to boil it down for you and to support the detailed slides that we're going to send you in the post-workshop package, is we've provided you with what we feel are the key characteristics of occupational transferability for each of these 7 clean tech themes. And then we'll show you how to assess your transferability for your unique occupation to clean tech. So first, let's explain what those key characteristics are for each clean tech theme. So for the innovation ecosystem, really, that's really about the life cycle or the path, the innovation pathway. And it involves more research and technology development as solutions to problems that are defined and require design, and then moving into implementation and piloting in field environments. As mentioned earlier, it involves more business development and commercialization skills to identify markets and supply chains. And as with oil and gas, it requires people who can assess the issues that are going on in the sector that are prevalent and important to stakeholders. And those would include issues related to the environment, financing or the financial world, reporting world, and stakeholder and public policy. And lastly, the work in the innovation ecosystem is in oil and gas, but also in research and academia, as well as startups as they provide technology solutions. So methane emissions reduction. This is a field that really rests very strongly on skills that are already in oil and gas, adapting existing technologies and designing new technologies. It involves knowledge that is already in oil and gas, and the work is directly in the oil and gas industry, as well as with service providers and consulting firms. For CCUS, which focuses on removing carbon from oil and gas production and utilizing carbon, it again relies on oil and gas expertise. And the work is in oil and gas in the areas of asset management, plant operations, pipelines, and optimizing production with oil and gas companies and the providers of services, as well as engineering companies and research institutions. So getting into well decommissioning, remediation, and repurposing, this is really an opportunity to innovate with existing assets and achieve more diversification and address important environmental issues. It involves project planning, subsurface decommissioning, remediating sites and reclaiming those sites, and perhaps more novel, assessing and repurposing the potential of sites. And it involves existing occupations within producer service companies and consulting and environmental firms. Cleaner fuels is driven by the Clean Fuel Standard, which affects liquid fuels, the production and use of liquid fuels, and involves partnerships with a broad range of sectors that are involved in providing the feedstock to producing liquid fuels, and then managing the distribution and use of liquid fuels. It utilizes industrial equipment and plants that are in place now that may require adapting, but they're in place in petrochemical manufacturing and food processing and refining. Chemical manufacturing, food processing, and the petrochemical industry. The jobs are in also input sectors. So that relates to the feedstocks, which includes agricultural products, pulp and paper, forestry, as well as CO2. In the midstream processing and co-processing and manufacturing of the products, and also in the downstream handling. So as you can see, cleaner fuels is broken into upstream inputs, midstream processing, and downstream handling and use. And then finally, lithium is a value-added product of oil and gas, and it includes the production of a different product being brine and lithium. It includes occupations already in oil and gas, but may require upskilling in lithium extraction technologies. And then blue hydrogen is, again, similar, also a value-added product of natural gas production, combined with CCS technologies, utilizing occupations in production facilities and pipeline transportation, and requires upskilling in hydrogen and CCS technologies. So if you're interested in any of these sectors, this gives you a snapshot of how you can prepare yourself. But as mentioned, we're going to give you a detailed package that gives you further information. I'm going to explain how to use that detailed package here and what is in it. So remember, we are looking at occupation to occupation transferability for your occupation from oil and gas into Cleantech. And some occupations will be more transferable than others. So the question that I'm going to answer is how you can assess your own occupational transferability to Cleantech or other sectors. And you can do it by determining if your occupation is directly transferable, in which case your qualifications, certifications, and knowledge are essentially the same as are required in the occupation in the two sector, which in this case is Cleantech. Is your occupation requiring a refocus, which will require you to do some upgrading because your skills and knowledge are very similar but not identical? Or will it require a reboot, in which case it's almost a complete career change and requires a more significant investment in upskilling, which is, probably a year or years plus. And the good news is for Cleantech is most of the occupation to occupation transferability is directly transferable or is a refocus. So in order to understand how to assess your own transferability with your own occupation, the key is to look at the value chain and the activities in the two sector to assess the occupational requirements as either direct refocus or reboot. And we have done this for you in the information package that we'll send. And this is an example for blue hydrogen facilities with CCUS. And then again, please look at this as a construct of how we have done the assessment and not the details. And I'm not even going to read the details because I want you to see that the important thing is the value chain. So blue hydrogen is broken down into a similar value chain as you'll find in petrochemicals because it involves industrial plants. So pre-FID, final investment decision, it requires project planning, project design and approval, project development and construction, and operations and maintenance. And the activities drive the occupations that are needed. So each of the activities are outlined for you at a high level, but it's fairly complete. And industrial construction is highlighted in a different section, also available to you in careertransitions.ca. So as I just said, the activities drive the occupations that are needed in the value chain. So here you can see the occupations required in the value chain for blue hydrogen. This is just an example that shows you the framework so that you can understand that we have assessed which of the occupations by the phase in the value chain are directly transferable or require a refocus, which means some investment in upskilling that is not significant. And that gives you some insights into, again, the training that you can do to qualify yourself or where you simply need to be more familiar with the sector. So how do you do that? How do you become more familiar with the sector that you're researching? And again, this is somewhat of a rhetorical question because we're going to give you a bit of an overview of how you conduct your own market research to prepare yourself to understand the value chain and the activities that will help you to understand the occupations required in the sector. So firstly, learn about the industry and the employment opportunities and its qualifications. And that will help you to understand the value chain in the sector and the activity and to utilize the sector's terminology. Secondly, gain an understanding of how to effectively assess what it takes to transition. And we've already helped you to do this through assessing your technical requirements, your nature of work transferability, and your value proposition transferability, and how to improve that. And then lastly, and not simply, monitor the leading indicators of industry and job growth that Pat has already described. So spending announcements, regulations, and incentive programs. So again, what do you need to do that? Well, you need to follow resources that are relevant to the sector that you're interested in this case, Cleantech. And you need to continue to do your research and stay up to date on advancements. So this slide, again, which we're going to send you, provides you links to links and information to how you follow jobs available in the sector, how you understand the sector and its activity and projects, what publications you can read that help you to distill and understand the information and recent events, how you can keep up to date on the labor market information in the sector, including salary information and things that you can do to connect with employers and people like you that are looking to be involved in clean tech or other sectors. So again, this is a methodology that applies to any sector that you wish to transition to. The resources will be different, but the message is the same, that understanding the sector life cycle or the value chain, the activities, the occupations, and the resources to follow to do your market research are key. If this has been confusing to you, well, guess what? We have a tool that helps you to follow this process and to use careertransitions.ca in a step-by-step process. So starting with you is the name of the tool. It's a workbook style set of individual exercises that ask you to think about what you have, what do you want, and what are you willing to do to get there. And those are the questions behind technical transferability, nature of work transferability, and value proposition. So by using this resource, and this is a screenshot of the landing page, which shows you where to download starting with you in careertransitions.ca, but we will send it to you as well. So I hope you have questions, because I'm going to ask you to put them in chat, and we're going to save, 10 minutes if we can at the end to answer your questions, or to do that in the follow-up newsletter, which you are now all subscribed to. If you have found this information exhausting and hard to absorb and are already exhausted from your job search, we understand that. And for that reason, we're going to provide you some tips to help you to improve your mental wellness and to arm you with resiliency tools for your job search. And with that, I'd like to introduce Avery Morris.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that, Cheryl and Pat. That was such useful information. I think it's going to provide a lot of value to people here. So as mentioned, I'm here to talk to everybody about mental wellness and resiliency during a time of job loss and career transition. To give you a little bit of background about who I am and what I do, I am a registered provisional psychologist. And I work at Calgary Career Counseling, as well as our partner practice, Synthesis Psychology. And our work there really focuses on helping people build, I think, fulfilling careers. And that can happen in a bunch of different ways. We help people plan and pursue new career paths, transition into new job roles, achieve career goals, as well as practical things like job search strategy, resume reviews, LinkedIn, all of that kind of stuff. So really our emphasis is on helping you with your career decisions, but also incorporating and attending to mental and emotional well-being during the process. As Cheryl just mentioned, it can be tiring. So we don't want to forget those really important elements as we go through all of this. So what are we going to talk about today? I'm going to really dive into the importance of mental wellness and resiliency in relation to career transitions, how to spot your cues or what to look for when managing your mental wellness, and how to improve the realities of your well-being by developing resiliency, and get ahead of any declines, or if you feel like you're in a decline, how to kind of bring it back. So the goal is really for you to leave understanding what to notice, what you can do, and how to get in further information or support if needed. Now, I want to touch on why we talk about this. It might not seem particularly relevant, but it is. Going through any kind of transition can be difficult, but a career transition, I think, brings its own level of concerns and its own layers. And I think the past year and a half, 2 years has absolutely highlighted that. It's shifted how we job hunt. It's had an impact on the market, industries, all of those things I'm sure everyone is very much familiar with. So we're dealing with not only a change to our livelihoods, but also the realities of what it means to switch a career. And that can be incredibly stressful: unemployment, underemployment, financial concerns, and then also the impact to our physical and mental health. So really, when we tend to those elements and we try to really display resiliency in our life, we're going to feel better overall. But we're also going to engage in the job search process and that transition in a really focused, intentional, and sustainable way. And I emphasize sustainable because I'm sure everyone can agree that it is more of a marathon than a sprint when we're making these changes. So it can be overwhelming, but there are absolutely things that we can do to help you find success in your current circumstances. Now, I want to give you a bit of background just briefly, so you have an understanding of what I'm talking about when I use these specific terms. So what is mental well-being? Part of our success during a transition is about understanding that definition. And really, it's about not the absence of problems or being unwell, but really the ability to actively cope and overcome with difficulties or challenges. And that last part is really important, that coping and overcoming with the challenges, because doing so is how we enact resiliency in our life. And being able to be resilient is really important when it comes to our mental wellness or mental health, okay? So moving on to the next definition that I want to touch on is, what is resiliency? Now, I think sometimes it can feel not abstract, but also like this big definition, something unattainable. And that's not true. A lot of you and all of us actually have probably displayed resiliency in our life in a lot of different ways. So it's something a lot of us have. And it's also something we can continue to develop, right? It's a skill that can be worked on. And I really want to stress that it is not being without negative experiences. It's not always being optimistic. Really, resiliency is about effectively navigating around or through challenges. So there's a couple ideas that I want to explore here, and that comes to the concept of locus of control. Now, that refers to the degree to which an individual feels they have a sense of agency regarding their life. So someone who has an internal locus of control, they're going to believe that the things that happen to them are greatly influenced by their own abilities, their mistakes, the actions, the decisions they make, right? They have a lot of influence over it. A person with an external locus of control, however, tends to think that other forces are at play. So it can be random chance, environmental factors, even the actions or decisions of others. And I absolutely recognize that there are some things that are beyond our control. The external locus of control exists. And again, this past year and a half has highlighted that for a lot of us. Evolving industries, shifts in the marketplace, changing economy, all of those things we don't have much influence over. But when we really focus on that internal locus of control and shift our perspective towards that, we've become so much more active in our life and in our career. And, again, this is a theme throughout, I would say, this entire webinar. Cheryl and Pat have highlighted this multiple times. It's what can you do in the face of these challenges, leveraging your skills and strengths, reaching out to your network, even attending this webinar, right? That's going to be something you can control. So we want to make sure we're doing that in our career, but we also want to make sure we're doing that in terms of our mental well-being. So a way to kind of understand this is when we look at what's called the mental health continuum. And this helps us build awareness about ourselves and what's really going on with us mentally, emotionally, physically, all of those things. Now, it's really easy to think of mental wellness as sort of extremes. You're, happy and healthy, or you're incredibly ill. And that's just not true. We experience a lot of emotions and we experience them on a continuum. So as you can see in this picture here, there are arrows underneath, and that shows that there's movement along this spectrum. So, we have this green zone of healthy functioning, whichever or whatever is normal for you, through to reacting, where we're noticing some changes in maybe our life. Then we move over to injured, where those changes have become a little more sustained and probably a bit more significant due to injured, and then onto illness, where quite severe and probably very prolonged or persistent. Now, again, there's no right or wrong place to be. Obviously, ideally, we'd like to be in healthy, but we move between all of these. And the thing is that when we are able to recognize where we are on this continuum, we're going to be able to implement tools and strategies. So take a look at some of these examples. These are ones we commonly see, but everyone has different indicators on this continuum, but it's really, honestly, such a wide variety of changes. It can be things like an alteration in your mood, your productivity, thinking patterns, attitude, really, like I said, quite a wide variety. So I actually want to ask the group a polling question now, because I'm really curious about what sort of changes everyone is noticing in their life currently going through these transitions. And if it's you, not yourself, or if you're a practitioner working with someone, what are you seeing in your clients? And, by all means, answer or select more than one answer, because very rarely is it just one change that we see. I know with some of the clients I'm working with, there's definitely a change in attitude, even productivity or motivation. It's really hard to want a job search or have those networking meetings when you're not feeling really good about your situation. So take a couple minutes here, and then we'll reconvene and review the results. Okay, I'm going to give it about 30 more seconds here as we see the last few responses trickle in. And like I said, we're going to see a wide variety here. Everyone responds differently. And, if you feel like you're selecting all of them, that's okay too, by all means. So we can close the poll now, and we'll take a look at what the responses are. So we can see here there is a range for sure, but definitely mood is a big one. And I think, that's a really common thing, especially with how probably chaotic everything has felt in the past 1.5 years, 2 years. There's been so many changes to the world and to our livelihoods, so it's understandable. The good news is that I'm here to provide you with some strategies that hopefully can help you manage some of these things. So what can we do? That's the big question. After we've recognized sort of some of those changes in ourselves, we can start to implement strategies. So, when we go through these changes, it's sometimes easier to stay in that negative headspace or sort of negative or unhealthy behaviors. But really, we want to target those and implement strategies to help with them, because that really reduces our confidence. It delays us from taking action. All of those things that we need to be able to do when we're trying to cope or manage these changes. So once we can recognize our indicators or cues, put our strategies in place, we're really going to see a more productive and engaged job search or career transition. Now, let's talk about some of those strategies. The first one or section that I want to talk about is self-care. I'm sure everyone's like, I'm tired of hearing about these, but I will talk about them all the time with all of my clients because they're the first thing that we are going to see fall by the wayside or maybe suffer as a result of stress. And, you'll remember on that continuum, that's like some of the different areas we saw. It was change in appetite and sleep patterns. It was change in our confidence. So we want to target all of these things because we're going to see a lot of great results when we do. The first one is move well, eat well, sleep well. Attending to your basic needs is really critical for our well-being and to display resiliency, I would say. So any form of body movement, I'm not asking for like, you know, an intense cardio workout. Even 15 minutes getting up from your desk is important. Eating food consistently or regularly, and something that's going to sustain you is also really important. That gives you energy, as well as sleeping. It's really easy for our sleep schedules to sort of change when we're, you know, staying up late and stressing, or if we don't have a job that we're going to in the morning, that can really change. And so we want to make sure we wake up feeling refreshed, maintaining energy throughout the day to do the things that we need to do. The next one is finding connection. It has been, again, not to really harp on the idea of the pandemic, but it has been a long time of isolation. And that really, I think, becomes reinforced when we are applying for jobs and we feel like we're not hearing any responses, there's radio silence, and that's really tough. So I want to make sure that everyone reaches out and spends time with people in a safe way, obviously. So make sure that you are connecting with people that are important to you. You don't have to talk about the job search if you don't want. You can take a break from it, but make sure that you're surrounding yourself with that sort of positive energy and people that lift you up. Okay. The third one is doing something for yourself. This might seem frivolous when you're trying to navigate a job change or a transition of some kind. But again, this is about making yourself feel good and building up that confidence. It's a way to fuel yourself. So stay connected to your hobbies and your interests. That is an important thing to do during all of this. It's going to really, I think, provide us some benefit in the long term. Now, the next grouping that I want to talk about is schedules and taking action. So this comes down to really helping us staying on task, promoting productivity, and keeping our distress in check, because routines and structure actually help us with that. It gives us some certainty in what can feel like really uncertain times. So the first one is know your limits. And this is about not working yourself into the ground. It's really easy to sit at a desk and, you know, endlessly scroll job boards or trying to constantly reach out to people. And I'm not here to deter you from those. I just want you to do it in a sustainable way. So listen to your brain and body when it's telling you to take a break. And when you log off or when you do step away, truly disconnect. Put down the phone, don't be checking the email, whatever it is, okay? The second one is the Pomodoro method. And some of you may or may not be familiar with this, but this is a productivity technique, and it's really based on focused work sessions with short breaks in between, and it helps promote sustained concentration, and it staves off mental fatigue, really. So how it works is you're going to pick a task and you're actually going to set a timer for 25 to 30 minutes. Once that like buzzer goes or that time runs out, you're going to take a 5-minute break. You can Google this. There's lots of different information out there about Pomodoro method. It's very well known, but it really helps break down tasks and avoid distractions, because it's, again, that focused work effort. So a really useful way if you feel like you need to get things done. The third one is kind of a weird one. It's called Eat the Frog First. And that's based on a Mark Twain quote, actually. And the idea being that if you eat a live frog first thing in the morning, you go through the rest of the day knowing that the worst is behind you. So we want to apply that to the tasks we need to get done. So your frog is going to be the task that you're most likely to procrastinate on or will have the greatest impact of your day. So if you're like, I really don't want to write up a new cover letter or rework my resume, you'd want to target that first. And doing it first and in the morning means your mind's clear, you're probably not being pulled in too many directions at this point, and you're going to gain momentum and really have a sense of accomplishment when you get it done. So set yourself up to eat your frog the night before, pick what it is you want to do, gather all the materials, and you'll be ready to go the next day. And the last thing I want to talk about in this section is called information interviews. And I think this ties in so beautifully to actually what Cheryl was mentioning earlier about understanding new sectors, industries, really gathering information. And we can do this through talking to people. And so I think it's kind of like a low key, low pressure way of networking. And it's really easy to pull back on that kind of stuff when we feel like the market's slowed down or there's not opportunities, but actually that's the time when we need to consistently do this. And people are actually quite generous with their time when you are coming to them purely out of place of curiosity, saying like, I'm interested in this industry. What do I need to know? What skills should I have? What are the qualities that are needed in this area? It's going to really set you up for success in the long run. Like I said, this is not a sprint, it's more of a marathon. So we need to be keeping that in mind. The final group of strategies is all about managing our thoughts and emotions. So I think a lot of us think we live in the present, but we really spend so much time thinking about the future or even the past, and understandably so. It's a stressful time. We worry, but we want to make sure that we're doing so in a way that is productive for us. So the first one is what ifs to if thens. When we worry, we are continually thinking, what if, what if, what if? And we want to change our languaging of that. So what if I can't find work in my current industry becomes, if I can't find work in my current industry, then I will look in related fields. And it seems like overly simple, but it's actually a really useful technique because it's problem solving. And the thing is, not all of our what ifs are going to have solutions. I absolutely recognize that. Some things are beyond our control, right? Or they're externally located, like I was talking about earlier. And what that indicates to us is that it's something we can't spend too much time worrying about. Easier said than done, I recognize that, but it's a really great practice to get into. If your what if to if then doesn't really feel like you can be, or it can be resolved, we need to set it aside because it's likely beyond our control. The next one is what we call a 2-minute worry session. And this might seem a bit strange, but it's really about giving yourself permission to worry. We're not here to tell you that things are always going to be easy or positive. That's not realistic. So actually give yourself time. And I mean that by setting a timer so it doesn't become too long, and allow yourself to just run through all of the concerns. And you can wrap it up by thinking, did I learn anything new? Do I feel any closer to a solution? And do I feel any better? Because if not, then again, that's indication that you need to put it aside. And sometimes you do, you can find solutions so it becomes a productive session, okay? The next was revisiting your core values. And again, I think that this ties in so nicely to what was discussed earlier. This is really helping give insight into yourself and what it is you're looking for. It can be a real loss when we're, having to change industries or careers, or we're looking for something new. And so we want to tap into what parts of your job were important to you, what made you feel successful, or what did you accomplish? I think it's going to really give you a sense of self and kind of like a renewed energy moving forward when you're looking at new career options. And the final one is Strengths 360. So this is something we do with a lot of our clients, if not all of them. And this is helping boost our confidence. It can be really intimidating and overwhelming when we're looking to switch industries or careers, and our confidence can take a hit when we've experienced a job loss, or again, like I said, when we're sending out resumes and not hearing anything back. So what we ask people to do is write down what they think their top 5 strengths are, and then ask people in your circle who think or who know you that they can report what their strengths are. Oh my gosh, I apologize, what they think your strengths are. And it's a really helpful thing because oftentimes we don't recognize the ways that we excel. And, there was talk earlier about how there's an emphasis on soft skills, and that's actually true. We're seeing that more and more. So it's great for people to say, this is the way I've seen you thrive, and ask them to give you specific examples so you can actually bring that forward when you're pursuing new career opportunities. Really helps us to get a fuller picture about ourselves and what we can bring to a new career. So that's sort of all for me in the way of strategies. I hope those were helpful. I do want to leave you with a couple resources here. These are a mixture of free and for-fee services, but there's a wide range of things. There's webinars, blogs, really useful tools. So I encourage you to explore all of these resources here. They're live links. So when you get this, you can click on them and hopefully that can provide you with some further information if needed. And yeah, if you are interested in working with me or even accessing some of our resources, you can obviously reach us at Calgary Career Counseling. You can give us a call, research our website. whatever it is you need to help you moving forward. And I wish everyone luck here, and I encourage you to remember that it's really truly not about if you'll find a new job or if you'll find success, it's when. So stay the course, and I have no doubt you'll find success. So thank you very much, and I will hand it back over to Cheryl and Pat.
Great. Thanks, Avery. So we do have a few minutes if anybody has any questions. Again, please feel free to pop them in chat. One of the questions that came to me that I'm gonna get Cheryl to respond to is just this sense that there's overall a lack of employment opportunities, whether it be in clean tech or oil and gas. Any kind of thoughts you can share around that in terms of where finding those few employment opportunities?
I mean, it is true that the oil and gas industry has shed more jobs than have been recovered through this evolving energy ecosystem. So part of what you're describing is a reality. Our feeling is that the best thing you can do is prepare yourself for a transition by really, rather than taking a gunshot approach or a buckshot approach where you're scattering your applications all over the place, really taking a targeted approach, maybe I'll call that the dartboard approach, and focusing on what you're aiming for and really doing your market research. We heard from employers and career counselors that repeatedly applicants don't understand the sector that they claim they're interested in. They're excited about renewables, or they're excited about digital, but they don't understand really what the employment opportunities and what it takes to transition. So using some of the methodologies we've described to zero in, do your market research on those sectors, and then figure out how, again, you're going to target your preparation and your upskilling, not just in the area of your technical transferability, but understanding fit, because employers will forgive a lack of the exact fit on technical skills. They're less likely to forgive a fit with the value proposition or the nature of work, because you become a retention risk to them. The biggest question, and this is raised earlier in the poll, one of the biases towards oil and gas is that employers feel that you're going to leave this new job and go back to oil and gas because it pays better, as soon as the job is available. So your defense against this, well, by the way, is to attend our next webinar. But your other defense against that is to really research what is the nature of work and to ensure you are a fit, to be realistic and genuine about that, and to really understand the value proposition. And if it requires a 25% cut in salary, be realistic. Is that viable for you in the long term? Now, sometimes when you enter a new sector, you start a little lower than your previous level. But once your experience and your broad knowledge that you've brought to the table is recognized, you can often advance more quickly. But again, you do have to be realistic about any sacrifices or adjustments that you make, that if that's the long term for you, is it going to keep you there, and be prepared to defend that both in your offer letter and in your interviews. Yeah, Pat, did I miss anything on that comes to mind for you?
I would just add that in the clean tech sector, that because so many of them are smaller companies, only the larger clean tech sector, it's clean tech companies that are kind of have gotten to a certain scale to hire, HR people or recruiters are those that are going to, that are using some of the, more traditional ways of hiring people. The smaller companies, the startups, they don't have that level of sophistication, if I could call it that. And so that's where, they're coming across people at networking sessions, at, other kinds of ways of connecting that is different than just applying to a job posting. So I think I would just reinforce that some of those other activities that Cheryl talked about, and certainly even Avery reinforced with the information interviews, is putting yourself out there in a different kind of way, to connect with potential employers, to connect with a network in the sector you're interested in, or the specific clean technology that you're interested in, might be a way that's different than just the traditional responding to a job posting, because that's not necessarily the way some of these clean tech companies are hiring.
Yeah, Pat, so I would like to, we've gone a little over, but I would like to take this question that just came in, and that's wondering if age has been a notable obstacle to finding work in another industry when you do have a strong skill set. So I think this is saying my technical transferability is high. Is age an obstacle to me? And the follow-up question is probably, how do I overcome that? Pat, do you want to take that on?
So, we certainly have, and maybe Cheryl, if you can just advance the slide, then people can be checking out the information there as I answer this. But, for sure, we have heard more and more that, sort of the more mature worker, age, experience, people are feeling that those are barriers in terms of them getting their foot in the door in another industry. And so, certainly part of it, Cheryl, kind of indicated around, thinking about, those kinds of things that employers might be worried about outside of your skill capabilities, and being able to address those up front, in terms of, oh, this is a very experienced worker that probably has lots of, high salary expectations, trying to address those biases right up front, in your cover letter or whatever. You really need to sort of get your transition story, in place around why you're making this change, why what you've done to, make this transition, and why you want to stay in this industry and make that shift. I think the other thing about, having a strong skill set, maybe being more mature, is also to think about, because we have heard, especially in the clean tech sector, those small companies, they maybe have one position. And so they need somebody who can maybe do a lot of different things, that can kind of hit the ground running. And so think about how you can offer value there, but you're maybe also willing to work in a different kind of work arrangement. You're willing to take on a contract work, or or a project or something like that to get your foot in the door. So just recognizing, putting your what the employer might be thinking about when they're looking at a more experienced worker, and how can you address that? Cheryl, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
The only thing I would add is take a closer look at those universal attributes, because that really marks a shift or a change from what the oil and gas typically look for in people. And so it could be that some of the bias is not just about age, but the bias is that you've come from a structured oil and gas industry that is slow moving, siloed, whatever those biases might be. So look at those universal attributes and think about how they relate to you. So how you can promote those that you have, or develop those that you do not have. I mean, that's a pretty big laundry list. You're not going to hit 100%, but I'd say that's a clue of how you can mitigate ageism.
And that's a wrap. Thank you so much. We're at 3 o'clock on the nose. We will be sharing this information that you see on this slide. It simply is ways to stay connected with us and make sure that you are aware of, the work that we're doing, but also our upcoming workshops. And that's really through LinkedIn and our newsletter. Also, just want to take a couple of seconds to promote our survey on Untapped Talent. If you go on careertransitions.ca, it will ask you if you want to take this survey. And really, this is just your responses help us profile the talent that's available to employers. And so, again, we just appreciate you taking a few minutes to do that survey. Thanks again. We hope to see you at some of our upcoming workshops and appreciate your time.